Well, it's good to see you here again. Thanks for letting me sit in on your practice. It would look like a really tough one. I think these athletes are going to be tired tonight.
Yeah, they probably will be. Like that was kind of our last, really tough practice before the big tournament next week. So our next two will be a little bit less volume. But yeah, thanks so much for being here. I'm excited to get some of your feedback.
Well, you've really got a talented group, so this tournament should be a really good experience for everyone. Well, now we're in the final step of your certification process in the advanced development context, and as we've already discussed, a debrief session takes place once the support to athletes and training requirement is done. The purpose of this debrief is, it's really three things. Number one is to give you a chance to reflect on the activities you're responsible for. Number two, discuss your performance. Number three, give the two of us a chance to develop an action plan for your ongoing professional development. The debrief should last between 30 and 60 minutes, including the development of the action plan. Throughout the debrief, I'll be asking you some questions. Please answer as specifically as you can. And I may write down some notes. These notes will help me to complete the evaluation or represent suggestions that we could discuss when we connect about the action plan. So whenever I'm writing something down, don't feel as if you said anything or did anything wrong. But before we begin, do you have any questions about the debrief?
No, it's all been pretty clear. The process you described is kind of what I was expecting and what we first talked about. So it's also pretty clearly outlined in the material that I got in my coach evaluation package. So no, I'm good to go.
Okay, great. During the discussions we had before the practice, you outlined to me the general context for this particular session. And why you chose to run a method 1 drill for the rebound spike and a method 3 drill for the attacking 61. Overall, how do you feel things went for these activities?
I think things went pretty well overall for each activity. It was perhaps a bit artificial for players to do a method 1 activity for that skill at this time of the season. But we worked a lot on the mechanics of the rebound spike earlier, and I thought it would be a good thing to look at for the evaluation. In addition, it was probably good for the players to revisit these basic notions. I also think the attacking 61 drill went pretty well.
How did these methods compare with those you were using before you got involved in the advanced development program?
Well, I mean, some things are pretty similar, but others are quite different. Overall, I think it's been a really valuable thing for us to work on cue reading and decision making and not just technique. I can't say I'm 100% on top of everything just yet, but it definitely feels like I'm getting there.
Okay, tell me how you've been using methods 1, 2, and 3 in your program since the beginning of the season. Which ones have you been using the most and why?
Well, I definitely used method 1 for the first few weeks of the program as I wanted the team to focus on the basics. I then introduced progressively, some method 2 drills to go over the main cues and decisions players are going to be faced with, so they become a little bit more familiar. And then this was valuable in particular for the new skills that were added to the team's repertoire this season. I've started to include a few method 3 drills into the practices about 2 weeks ago, as I thought it would be a pretty good way to prepare for the upcoming tournament and just to get the offense kind of taken on all cylinders.
During the method 1 drill, I noticed you positioning yourself behind the attackers. Can you tell me why you chose this vantage point?
I find it allows me to see the action from the same vantage point as the players, but I'm also a little bit off at an angle so that I can assess both the execution and how the athlete's reading the play.
Well, this is more of a basic aspect of the rebound spike skill. Did you notice that player number 8 remained inside the court each time he tried to hit the ball? And why did you think he did that?
Yeah, I did notice that. His approach angle wasn't quite correct. But it was kind of a cause of the pass being too low, so he didn't quite have enough time to get outside the court.
I noticed that you didn't decide to make an intervention in that situation. Now that we're talking about this, right here in this debrief session, would you make the same decision?
I think I might intervene next time. It does happen in a game, but I would rather the passer do it, we're trying to do it properly, not kind of the fixed play. So I would probably ask the passer to get the ball a little bit higher to the setter before, moving quickly to get outside the court.
If you chose to intervene, what could you say to player number 8 regarding the approach cues in this drill and why?
So I guess it would be Take 3 big shuffle steps to the left as soon as you pass the ball to give yourself a better approach angle.
Okay. What cues could you ask the player to read in the Method 1 drill, and what decisions could the player have to make?
Oh yeah, right. I think I totally forgot about that. There's also a cue reading and decision-making component to pay attention to here. So before the serve, I would ask him to ensure his starting position relative to the sideline is correct. And then as the serve is coming, he would need to focus on the ball and get his platform ready early. And in this type of situation, he should know where the setter will go, but he must still locate the final position of the setter and make some adjustments at contact if necessary to ensure the pass has a good height. This being a Method 1 drill, the serve was not too hard, like it was a fairly easy serve. So the passer should try to get the ball right to the net and above 3 meters, about 3 meters above the tape.
Okay, great. That's a great example of helping the player to become aware of the basic cue reading decision-making aspects of a Method 1 drill. In the Method 3 drill that you used, there is a risk that the hitter contacts the blocker when landing. While there was no incident during the drill, what could you say to the players to minimize this type of risk?
Yeah, I guess there was a few situations there where the players were like nearly colliding, like the attacker was continuing to jump and landed over the center line.
What would you do to address this in the future?
I guess the solution would be to work on the player's footwork so that they don't drift under the net.
Okay, why would you emphasize that particular aspect?
Well, if the footwork is corrected, the player will jump more straight up and down, and then there'll be less of a broad jump or drift.
Okay, is there something else that you could do to ensure the players don't drift under the net?
I can't really think of anything just now.
Okay, are there any rules that you might put in place during the drill to motivate the players, for example, to stop drifting over the center line?
Okay, so yeah, I guess so for the attacking side, like you could maybe have them lose a point if they touch the center line.
Yeah, that's a great idea. If I can offer another suggestion, you may also consider asking the setter to pull the ball off the net. You may also mention the safety aspect during the drill's explanation and demonstration, but we can get back to that in a few minutes. For each drill you used, what might come next in a progression and why?
Well, I could use a Method 2 drill as a follow-up to the Method 1 drill, and then I would probably use simulated play as a follow-up to the Method 3 drill.
You may recall that in one of the E modules deals with the concept of loading. Examples of how an activity can be loaded were probably also presented during the in-person workshop. But how could the Method 1 drill you used be loaded before you move on to the Method 2 drill?
Yeah, I think I could have added one more cue to read, for example, a third blocker. I could have made the task a bit more difficult by making the block bigger. I maybe could have added a physical activity before the execution of the skill, or reduce the time that they had to execute the skill and make it a bit of a faster set.
All right, well now I'm going to share with you some observations I made during the practice. I'm going to ask you a few more questions to validate certain aspects, and my comments will be focusing on specific behaviors that are listed in the evaluation forms that I used. These are the same forms that you downloaded from your evaluation package. So first, let's discuss the teaching process. I thought your organization was excellent. It met all the expectations. The equipment needed for each activity was available. There was enough equipment for everyone. Time was really well used. You inspected the gym for safety before the session. You had a charged cell phone with you. You provided me with a copy of the EAP, and you showed me the folder where you kept all the athletes' medical information, as well as the numbers to contact in case of an emergency. So really good stuff there. Overall, your explanations and demonstrations also met most of the expected standard. All the athletes could see really well, hear really well. Your message was clear, the demo was good and technically sound, and you checked for understanding. So based on our previous discussion about the risks of collision in the Method 3 drill that you used, what could you say to the players when you explained the drill?
I think there's probably a couple things I would do. Just number one, during the explanation, I would emphasize that the attackers should make sure to approach properly to avoid drifting under the net. And I think I would also emphasize, to ingrain this behavior in the athletes during a practice match, where you could, have a loss of point if you did that.
Okay, could you describe what you would say to ensure players understand what approaching correctly means?
They should just jump straight up.
Can you be more specific?
I guess I would get them to take a larger second step before the closing step.
Okay, great. One aspect that I didn't see in the explanation or demonstration you provided for each drill is the cue reading and decision-making aspects athletes should focus on. You emphasize mostly the execution. Would you have any comment to make on this particular point?
Yeah, I guess you're right. I didn't emphasize the cue reading and decision-making stuff as much as I could have.
We already clarified this aspect for Method 1 drill. If you had to do the explanation of your Method 3 drill again, how would you deal with the cue reading and decision-making components?
Yeah, I mean, cue reading and decision-making is super important aspects of performance in this attacking drill. I would ask the blockers to focus on the attacker's feet.
Well, this is primarily an attacking drill. What cues could the attackers have detected?
Well, I kind of felt like the attackers did really well. It was the blockers who seemed to be off, and they didn't seem to be paying attention to where the attacker was.
Why do you think this was so?
Well, I guess they just managed to score half the time. The attackers were incredibly efficient.
Is that what you expect given the conditions that were in place during the drill?
Well, I guess I don't know. Like there were 3 blockers. I also wanted the passer to handle a hard ball to make sure the setter's job would be difficult, as it'll probably be the case at the tournament next week.
Did you think this gives an advantage to the offense in this case?
Well, I guess it depends how the setter handles the ball.
Okay. Any other comments you'd like to add here?
Not really.
Okay. If an athlete asked you, what should I be watching when I'm blocking in that particular drill, what would your answer be?
Well, the most important things to watch would be the feet, as I mentioned before, but also the ball. I think that's what they should focus on when blocking.
Okay, let's move on and talk about some of the interventions you made. Overall, the quality of the feedback you provided met the expectations. It was positive, very specific, and focused on what the players should do and how they should execute the actions. During the activities, would you say that you provided not enough, too much, or just enough feedback?
I think the amount of feedback was kind of bang on in most cases. I used to talk a lot during activities. Now I try to interrupt the action only when it's really necessary. I let them practice and I say something only when I think they're like significantly off. I also focus on the most important point and I try to describe very specifically what has to be done and how.
I also noticed that you almost always begin with a question.
Yeah, right. That's one thing I got from these modules. I try to get them to describe what they were trying to do and figure out on their own what they should do in the situation. It seems to work pretty well. The players are really involved and they try to find solutions by themselves. They've definitely become more independent, which I think is good.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would encourage you to keep using the questioning and delayed feedback approaches as they are very effective. I've also noticed that after making an intervention, you observe the player again instead of focusing on another group right away. Why did you do this?
I think it's really about making sure that the player understood the message. Like, I'm not expecting that the error is immediately fixed and never have to talk about it again necessarily, but at least I want to make sure that they understood the message and that they're at least trying to implement the solution.
Well, you certainly seem to be applying the principles of feedback quite effectively. Have you noticed any impact on the athletes' behaviors?
Like, I feel like the players are a bit more autonomous and they certainly seem to pay more attention when I'm speaking to them. So I guess they're kind of expecting that I'm going to ask them a question and they want to know their stuff.
All right, now let's spend a bit of time on the methods and drills you used. For your Method 1 drill, you did use an intermediate level skill, which was one of the requirements. Also, the practice conditions were consistent with pretty much everything that's recommended for the early stages of skill development. You did a bunch of things. You used the whole skill method. The general pattern of the drill was clear. Players had a clear representation of what they had to accomplish. They practiced at a pace that could manage and perform at a high number of repetitions, and the mechanical aspects of the action were given adequate emphasis. If you were asked to do one thing different in this drill, what would it be?
I don't think I'd change the drill per se. I think it was all right the way it is. I'd probably put a bit more emphasis on the cue reading and decision-making aspect that we've been talking about, and I'd probably also emphasize like an external focus of attention during the execution.
Can you tell me a little bit more about this concept of external focus during the execution?
Sure. So this was one that I wasn't really clear myself about for a while, but in reality it's fairly simple when you think about it. It's not that the player shouldn't be thinking about their stance or arm position or anything like that. It's just that the best time to think about that is before they begin the action. Like once they're doing it, the focus has to be on what they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, that's a very good way to put things. For your method 3 drill, could you please explain again how the offense was advantaged?
Based on our previous discussion, I realized my drill would probably need some adjustments, as I'm not really sure the offense was at an advantage.
Any thoughts on how this can be done?
Well, I think if the setter had a better pass, that would be a factor.
Well, I think that covers the points I wanted to bring up. Would you have any questions or remarks before we move on to the action plan?
Not really. I guess, did I pass? Like, Nationals is coming up pretty soon. I kind of need this, so.
Well, overall, I think you had a really good performance. You met standards in most criteria, and in some cases, you even exceeded minimum standards. However, there are some aspects that I consider borderline. And as you know, the minimum standards must be met in all criteria for certification to be granted. So I'd like to go over my notes one last time and factor in some of the additional information I took during our discussion before we move on to the action plan step. If you're in a rush to leave right now, we could follow up on the phone tomorrow. But if you can spare another 20 minutes or so, we could reconvene in 10 minutes and discuss the action plan.
Yeah, that sounds good. I can wait.
Okay, so now we're at the action plan step. This is an important step for your continued development, and as certification in itself shouldn't be viewed as an endpoint, but it's an important milestone. Before we begin, I want to be sure that all the certification requirements and tasks you had were clear to you. Was this the case?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think I did too well in my method 3 drill, but I mean, I knew what was expected of me.
Well, I wouldn't say that. There are some aspects that I consider below standard in the way you implemented the guidelines pertaining to method 3 in one of your coaching tasks. Can you think of which aspect I'm referring to here?
Well, I think the whole thing of, you know, who really had the advantage during the attacking 61 drill was the problem.
For the most part, yeah. Your organization was good. The way you explained things to the players was spot on. And the way you intervened during the drill was also really good. However, the structure of the drill itself showed a few inconsistencies in the way the advantage was created. So the entire purpose of the drill was not achieved. The attackers must have the advantage, and they must also be clear about what cues they should focus on in order to exploit the situation. For this particular task, I can't give you the credit just now. However, you did do very well with the method 1 task and the rebound spike skill, and your teaching skills are very good based on what I've seen today. How could you show me that you can implement this method 3 drill or another one in a way that's consistent with Volleyball Canada's guidelines?
Well, I guess I can send you a video. We've got another practice in 2 days, and I kind of wanted to include the drill again anyways, just to keep the guys thinking about it. Would it be okay if I sent you a video?
Yeah, that's a great idea. I don't need a full-length 12 to 15-minute video as though you had chosen the video option. I've seen all I needed to see in terms of safety, organization, your ability to explain and give feedback. But a video alone may not be quite enough. I'd also like to see a diagram of this drill outlining a few things. So I'll need to see the number of players involved on each side in their initial positions, how the play begins, what attackers are trying to do, what blockers and defenders are trying to do, how the advantage would be created for the offense, and why this represents an advantage. If you could send me this information along with a short video lasting 2 or 3 minutes where I can see the players in action and the offense really has the type of advantage that you're describing, that would be all I need to validate the achievement of the standard. If necessary, you can refer to the e-modules in the methods section of the website and look at some drill examples in the coach workbook as well. It has some really good references there. If I receive the video later this week, I'll look at it right away, and if these points are clarified, then I'll process your credit right away. Because that's really the only thing I consider not meeting certification standards. Are you okay with this as an option?
Yeah, totally. It shouldn't be any problem. I was kind of afraid I'd have to do the whole thing again.
Yeah, that's not the case at all. With this evaluation system, only aspects that do not meet the certification standards have to be redone. And in your case, it's a very specific point that I'll need to validate. If several aspects of your performance had to be redone, you might had to pay some additional fees. But in this case, it should take me less than 5 minutes to go over your resubmission, and no additional fee will apply. I've already outlined that you had met all the applicable standards in these areas of teaching, and with the coaching task dealing with the Method 1 drill. Even though your teaching skills are really good, as a suggestion for your continued improvement, you may consider videotaping yourself and using the grids that are included in your coach evaluation package to self-assess on a regular basis. These are the same grids as the ones that I used today, by the way. You may consider doing this for all types of coaching activities you lead, but don't be overly critical of yourself, but look how you can do certain things even better. Are there any other things that you can think of?
Well, I guess I could ask the athletes for their feedback. I could also ask another coach to come in and kind of observe me. I also have a friend who knows like nothing about volleyball, but she's like a really fantastic teacher. I'm guessing she could offer a few pretty valuable comments on the way I am interacting with the players.
Yeah, that's great. Although this particular evaluation didn't focus on performance analysis, and even though you had a really good score in the performance analysis evaluation, this is a really critical aspect of coaching. So I would also encourage you to critically reflect on your current performance analysis approach, so you can become even more effective in this area. Your skills in making quality interventions and providing feedback, as well as your knowledge in this particular area, appear to be excellent, and in my opinion, exceed what's expected for certification. You seem to have a particular interest in this topic, so you might consider meeting with graduate students or university experts in this area of motor learning, and keep abreast of the new applied research results. Did you have any other ideas for professional development?
Well, I mean, that's something I've been thinking about for a while, and I'm guessing that these experts might be open to discuss if I brought up a few specific issues and trends I've identified over the last few years. Maybe some practical research projects might even become an option. But yeah, I mean, basically just want to keep learning.
Well, I think we've covered all the points we had to deal with today. Thank you very much for the time and your commitment to this process. I trust it was a valuable learning experience, and I'll be expecting your drill description and video in the next couple days, and I'll follow up with you very shortly afterwards. And good luck with the upcoming tournament.
Thanks a lot. This has been a pretty cool process for me. I've got a long way to go, but I mean, this definitely feels like a big step in the right direction. And I'll send you that stuff in the next couple days.
Awesome, sounds great.
Great, cheers.